Welcome to the most beautiful place on Earth that's actively trying to kill you. Ladakh sits so high in the Himalayas that commercial airliners fly below some of its mountain peaks, where the air contains about as much oxygen as a politician's promise, and where people have somehow figured out how to grow food, raise families, and maintain their sanity while living in what most reasonable humans would consider an uninhabitable, frozen wasteland. This isn't your typical vacation destination, where you can roll up with flip-flops and a sun hat. Ladakh exists at altitudes that make your lungs question their life choices, temperatures that swing more wildly than a toddler's mood, and in an environment so harsh that even the bacteria have trust issues. Yet somehow, nearly 300,000 people call this place home, and they're not just surviving. They're thriving in ways that would make survival show contestants weep with inadequacy. The locals have a saying: Ladakh is not a place, it's a feeling. That feeling, as it turns out, is mostly your chest tightening from oxygen deprivation, while your brain struggles to process landscapes so spectacular they seem photoshopped by deities with excellent taste in dramatic scenery. Mountains stretch endlessly in every direction, painted in colors that don't exist in normal places. Deep purples, impossible blues, and shades of brown that make you wonder if you've accidentally wandered onto another planet. But here's what makes Ladakh truly extraordinary. People don't just endure these conditions. They've created one of the most fascinating cultures on Earth while doing it. We're talking about communities where sharing a wife among brothers was considered smart economics, where monks have figured out how to stay warm through meditation alone, and where the local cuisine includes tea made with yak butter that somehow becomes delicious once you accept that normal food rules do not apply at 12,000 feet above sea level. The economics of survival here operate on principles that would confuse Wall Street analysts, but make perfect sense when your growing season lasts about as long as a celebrity marriage. People live comfortably on $500 per month, not because they're poor, but because they've mastered efficiency in ways that would make minimalist lifestyle gurus jealous. Every resource gets used, reused, and then used again until it becomes part of someone's house foundation. This is a place where plastic bottles are banned not because of environmental virtue signaling, but because in a desert where water is more precious than gold, every container matters. Where festivals aren't just cultural celebrations but sophisticated psychological survival strategies for getting through winters that would challenge polar bears. Where education happens in solar-powered schools built by students who learned engineering by necessity rather than textbooks. The transportation system consists mainly of roads that were clearly designed by someone with a twisted sense of humor and a complete disregard for basic physics. The famous Khardung Pass sits at 18,380 feet, making it higher than most mountains have any right to be, while somehow remaining a functional highway that people actually drive on voluntarily. The fact that anyone reaches their destination alive suggests either divine intervention or that humans are far more resilient than safety regulations assume. What you're about to experience isn't just a travel documentary. It's an exploration of human possibility at its most extreme. You'll meet people who've turned impossible living conditions into advantages, who've created sustainable communities while most of the world argues about sustainability, and who maintain levels of happiness that would make life coaches question their career choices. So prepare yourself for a place where every breath is an accomplishment, every meal is an adventure, and every day provides proof that humans can adapt to absolutely anything, as long as they maintain their sense of humor and keep their yak butter tea warm. Welcome to Ladakh, where paradise comes with a survival manual, and the views are so spectacular they justify every moment of oxygen-deprived confusion. Ladakh occupies one of the most geographically ridiculous positions on Earth, sandwiched between Pakistan and China in a high-altitude plateau that seems designed to test human stubbornness against natural impossibility. The region sits in the rain shadow of the Himalayas, which means it receives about as much annual precipitation as Arizona, except Arizona doesn't require you to function at altitudes that make sea-level dwellers hallucinate. The landscape, Reads like a geology textbook written by someone on hallucinogens. You've got the Karakoram Range to the north, featuring peaks so tall they create their own weather systems, the Great Himalayan Range to the south, and the Ladakh Range running through the middle like a massive stone spine. The entire region averages over 11,000 feet in elevation, which puts most of Ladakh higher than the highest peaks in the continental United States. Denver calls itself the Mile High City at a modest 5,280 feet. Ladakh residents would consider Denver a low-altitude beach resort. This wasn't always the isolated moonscape we see today. Back when the Silk Road was functioning as the ancient world's primary trade network, Ladakh served as a crucial rest stop for merchants crazy enough to haul goods across some of the planet's most hostile terrain. Caravans loaded with Chinese silk, Indian spices, and Central Asian textiles would lumber through these mountain passes, their yaks and camels probably wondering who thought this route made economic sense. The traders weren't just passing through. They were creating one of history's most unlikely commercial hubs in a place where growing food requires engineering degrees and staying warm demands advanced degrees in creative problem-solving. The locals got rich providing what every exhausted merchant desperately needed: shelter, supplies, and probably some seriously strong local beer to help forget about the journey ahead. Buddhism arrived around the same time, and unlike most religious conversions that happened through conquest or aggressive missionary work, Buddhism in Ladakh took hold because it actually made practical sense for the environment. When your daily existence involves surviving in conditions that would challenge Arctic explorers, a philosophy centered on acceptance, mindfulness, and finding peace with suffering becomes less abstract spirituality and more essential survival psychology. The political history gets complicated in ways that would give international relations professors headaches. For centuries, Ladakh existed as an independent kingdom, ruled by a succession of monarchs who had the challenging job of keeping their tiny mountain realm from being absorbed by larger, hungrier neighbors. They managed this through strategic marriages, clever diplomacy, and the natural defense system of living in a place so remote that conquering it hardly seemed worth the logistical nightmare. The British eventually showed up, as they had an unfortunate habit of doing everywhere, and incorporated Ladakh into the princely state of Kashmir in 1834. This began Ladakh's long and complicated relationship with being governed by people who lived in more sensible climates and probably couldn't locate Ladakh on a map without assistance. When India gained independence and Kashmir became the world's longest-running territorial dispute, Ladakh found itself on the front lines of a geopolitical standoff that continues today. The region is now a union territory of India, which sounds official until you realize that the nearest major Indian city, Delhi, is over 400 miles away across roads that would challenge professional stunt drivers. The climate operates on principles that seem designed to confuse meteorologists and challenge human adaptation. Winters are so brutal that the region becomes essentially cut off from civilization for 6 months annually. The famous Zojila Pass, which connects Ladakh to Kashmir, closes completely from November to May, turning the region into an isolated island of humanity surrounded by impassable mountains and weather that would make Antarctic researchers complain. Summer temperatures can swing from scorching during the day to near freezing at night, often within the span of a few hours. The lack of humidity means your skin will crack just from breathing, and the UV radiation at this altitude will give you a sunburn in the shade. It's entirely possible to simultaneously suffer from heat stroke and hypothermia, sometimes on the same afternoon. The growing season lasts roughly 4 months, during which families work with the intensity of people who understand that agricultural failure means not eating until next year. Everything about life here revolves around making the most of this brief window when temperatures rise above completely impossible to merely extremely challenging. Yet, in this landscape that looks like Mars after a particularly bad day, humans have not only survived, but created one of the most unique and sustainable cultures on the planet. The isolation that makes Ladakh so challenging has also preserved traditions and wisdom that have vanished elsewhere, creating a living laboratory of human adaptation that continues to evolve in fascinating ways. The mountains themselves tell stories of geological violence spanning millions of years. These aren't gentle rolling hills. They're massive uplifts of Earth that demonstrate what happens when continental plates disagree about territorial boundaries. The Indus River cuts through this landscape like a green ribbon, providing the water that makes any human habitation possible while creating valleys that serve as highways through otherwise impassable terrain. Living at altitudes where commercial aircraft crews requires biological adaptations that most humans never develop, creating daily life experiences that range from mildly challenging to absolutely surreal. Every breath in Ladakh contains about 40% less oxygen than sea-level lungs expect, which means your first few weeks here feel like trying to run a marathon while breathing through a cocktail straw. The locals, born and raised in this thin air, watch newcomers struggle with basic tasks like walking upstairs or having coherent conversations, probably wondering why anyone would voluntarily live somewhere with so much unnecessary oxygen. Their cardiovascular systems have adapted over generations to extract maximum efficiency from minimal atmospheric resources, giving them lung capacities and red blood cell counts that would make Olympic athletes jealous. Traditional Ladakhi architecture reflects centuries of people who figured out how to stay alive when outdoor temperatures regularly dropped to levels that would kill exposed humans within hours. Houses are built from mud bricks and stone, with walls thick enough to stop artillery shells and small windows designed to retain every possible bit of warmth. These are not aesthetic choices. They're engineering solutions for survival in an environment where heat loss equals death. The rooftops are flat and multifunctional, serving as social gathering spaces during brief summer months and storage areas for everything from firewood to dried food supplies. When every square foot matters for survival, architectural design focuses on utility rather than curb appeal. Houses often have multiple levels, with livestock kept on ground floors during winter months, providing both protection for animals and additional heating for human occupants through shared body warmth. Inside these fortress-like structures, families gather around heating systems that combine traditional wisdom with creative desperation. The kangri, a traditional clay pot filled with burning charcoal, gets carried from room to room like a portable heater. Yes, people walk around with small fires in their hands because when the alternative is freezing to death, minor carbon monoxide exposure seems like a reasonable trade-off. Modern Ladakhi homes have upgraded to solar heating systems that work surprisingly well at altitudes where solar radiation is intense and unfiltered by thick atmospheres. Solar panels and passive solar design provide heating and electricity during daylight hours, while traditional backup systems handle nighttime and cloudy weather situations. Water management requires engineering sophistication that would impress urban planners. Traditional systems include intricate networks of channels, storage tanks, and distribution methods that capture and conserve every drop of available moisture. Modern additions include solar-powered pumps and community sharing agreements that require more negotiation than international peace treaties. The daily rhythm follows natural patterns that industrial civilization has largely abandoned. People wake with sunrise not because of philosophical commitment to natural living, but because artificial lighting after dark requires precious fuel resources. Work schedules adapt to weather conditions rather than arbitrary time commitments, with outdoor activities concentrated during the warmest parts of each day. Clothing serves multiple functions beyond basic coverage, with traditional garments designed for layering systems that adapt to dramatic temperature swings throughout single days. The famous Ladakhi gonchas are long robes that provide wind protection, warmth retention, and storage space for essential items, essentially functioning as wearable survival systems. Food storage and preparation happen year-round, with families dedicating significant time and energy to preserving summer abundance for winter survival. Traditional preservation techniques include drying, fermentation, and freeze-drying that happens naturally in the extreme climate, creating food supplies that remain edible for months without refrigeration. children grow up with responsibilities that would overwhelm adults in easier climates. By age 6, they're contributing to essential household tasks like fuel collection and food preparation. By 10, they can navigate mountain terrain that would challenge experienced hikers and understand weather patterns with accuracy that would impress meteorologists. The social structure operates on principles of mutual dependence that create community bonds stronger than most urban neighborhoods develop over decades. When your survival depends entirely on your neighbor's cooperation and assistance, social conflicts get resolved quickly and thoroughly. Community decisions consider long-term survival implications rather than short-term convenience or individual preferences. Health care happens through combinations of traditional knowledge, community support, and modern medicine adapted to extreme conditions. Local healing practices include herbal remedies specifically developed for high-altitude health issues, meditation techniques for pain management, and community care systems that ensure nobody faces health challenges alone. Perhaps most remarkably, people in these extreme conditions maintain happiness levels and life satisfaction that exceed many populations living in far more comfortable circumstances. This might be because when your environment is actively trying to kill you, minor inconveniences seem insignificant. Or it might be that Buddhist philosophy combined with genuine community interdependence creates healthier social relationships than individualistic cultures typically achieve. Ladakh operates under regulations that seem strange until you understand that survival in extreme environments requires collective responsibility and environmental protection taken to levels that make normal environmental policies look casual. What outsiders often perceive as arbitrary restrictions are actually carefully developed systems that prevent ecosystem collapse under modern pressures. The plastic ban represents environmental necessity disguised as policy activism. Single-use plastics are prohibited throughout the region, with enforcement that includes surprise inspections, substantial fines, and immediate business closure for violations. This isn't environmental virtue signaling. It's practical recognition that in a desert environment where waste disposal options consist of burn it, bury it, or watch it blow around forever, preventing plastic waste is easier than managing the consequences. The enforcement mechanism works through a combination of official inspections and community pressure that makes compliance nearly universal. Tourist shops caught selling plastic water bottles face immediate shutdown. Restaurants using plastic utensils receive visits from officials who seem to take personal offense at environmental violations. The result is a region where desperate backpackers search frantically for metal water bottles, while locals casually carry traditional leather containers their ancestors would recognize. Water usage restrictions operate on principles combining traditional conservation wisdom with modern necessity. Villages maintain irrigation schedules that are negotiated annually and enforced through social pressure that makes homeowners association regulations look gentle. Household wastewater gets recycled through systems that would impress sustainability engineers, not from environmental consciousness, but because wasting water in a desert climate is a luxury nobody can afford. The timing and allocation of water use requires community coordination that considers agricultural needs, household requirements, and seasonal availability patterns that change based on snowfall, glacier melt, and increasingly unpredictable climate patterns. Violating water agreements results in social consequences that extend far beyond official penalties. Building regulations combine traditional architectural wisdom with modern safety requirements in ways that create fascinating bureaucratic situations. New construction must follow traditional design principles not just for cultural preservation, but because centuries of building in this environment have produced architectural solutions that actually work. Modern materials are permitted, but they must be used in ways that don't compromise thermal efficiency and structural integrity that traditional methods provide. Tourism regulations operate through permit systems designed to limit environmental impact while maintaining economic benefits for local communities. Inner line permits are required for many areas, not just for security reasons, but because the carrying capacity of high-altitude ecosystems is genuinely limited. The permit process includes mandatory acclimatization periods that protect both visitors and the healthcare system from altitude sickness emergencies. Monastery rules extend beyond religious buildings into surrounding community areas in ways that surprise visitors accustomed to separation between religious and secular spaces. Dress codes, behavior expectations, and noise restrictions apply in village areas near religious sites, reflecting the integration of spiritual practice with daily community life rather than compartmentalized religious observance. Alcohol regulations reflect Buddhist cultural influences combined with practical concerns about high-altitude physiology. While alcohol isn't banned, its sale and consumption are regulated through systems that prioritize community control over market freedom. Many villages maintain traditional brewing rights for local barley beer, while restricting commercial alcohol sales in ways that balance cultural practices with health and safety concerns. Market regulations operate through traditional systems that balance competition with community welfare. Price controls aren't government intervention, but community agreements that prevent exploitation during seasonal shortages. These systems include emergency resource sharing protocols that activate during weather emergencies or supply disruptions, ensuring community survival takes priority over individual profit. Photography restrictions in certain areas reflect both security concerns and cultural respect requirements that extend beyond simple tourism management. Sacred sites, military installations, and culturally sensitive locations have restrictions that require understanding and compliance from visitors who want to maintain positive relationships with local communities. Environmental protection rules cover activities that might seem minor but have significant cumulative impacts in fragile ecosystems. Campfire regulations prevent deforestation in areas where trees grow slowly. Waste disposal requirements prevent long-term environmental damage, and wildlife protection measures maintain ecological balance essential for ecosystem health. Village-level social regulations operate through traditional systems that handle dispute resolution, resource allocation, and behavior standards through community consensus rather than external authority. These are artificial laws but social agreements that carry practical authority because community cooperation is essential for survival in environments where individual self-sufficiency is impossible. The enforcement of these various regulations happens primarily through social pressure and community cooperation rather than official penalties. In places where survival depends on neighbor relationships, being known as someone who violates community agreements carries consequences that extend far beyond legal sanctions. Reputation for reliability and community cooperation affects everything from marriage prospects to emergency assistance availability. Perhaps most interesting is how these regulations create systems that actually work more effectively than many government-imposed alternatives. Community-based enforcement, traditional knowledge integration, and mutual dependence create compliance systems that achieve environmental protection and social cooperation through shared understanding rather than external coercion. Food in Ladakh represents survival cuisine elevated to an art form, where every dish serves multiple functions beyond basic nutrition and flavor takes a back seat to staying alive in conditions that would challenge professional survival experts. The cuisine combines Tibetan influences with local adaptations and practical necessities that create eating experiences unlike anywhere else on the planet. Thukpa dominates Ladakhi meals for reasons that become obvious once you understand high-altitude physiology and extreme climate survival requirements. This isn't just soup, it's an engineered delivery system for calories, warmth, hydration, and essential nutrients wrapped in a single bowl that can be prepared with minimal fuel consumption. The noodles provide carbohydrates for high-altitude energy needs, vegetable supply vitamins that prevent scurvy and other deficiency diseases, and the hot broth delivers immediate warmth plus the salt content needed to prevent electrolyte imbalances common at extreme altitudes. The preparation process conserves resources while maximizing nutritional output. Everything goes into one pot. Cooking happens quickly to minimize fuel use. and the result provides complete meal satisfaction using ingredients that store well and remain available during long winter months when fresh food becomes impossible to obtain. Momos evolved from their Tibetan origins into substantial survival foods that pack maximum calories into portable packages perfect for high-altitude metabolism requirements. These aren't delicate restaurant appetizers, they're dense, filling dumplings stuffed with yak meat, barley, or preserved vegetables that provide sustained energy release for people whose bodies burn calories at accelerated rates due to altitude and cold exposure. The steaming process serves multiple purposes beyond cooking, including food safety in environments where water quality can be questionable, and fuel conservation through efficient cooking methods that prepare large quantities simultaneously. Momos can be prepared in advance and reheated easily, making them ideal for communities where cooking fuel is precious and meal preparation requires careful planning. Butter tea, or gurgur chai, sounds revolting until you understand it's essentially liquid medicine disguised as a beverage. Made with yak butter, salt, and tea leaves churned into something that looks like coffee but tastes like nothing you've experienced. This drink provides essential fats for high-altitude metabolism, salt for preventing dehydration and altitude sickness, and caffeine for combating the fatigue that affects most people at extreme elevations. The preparation involves specialty equipment and techniques that create proper consistency and flavor balance. The churning process aerates the mixture while blending ingredients that normally wouldn't combine, creating a drink that provides immediate energy and warmth while delivering nutrients specifically needed for high-altitude survival. Locals consume butter tea constantly throughout the day, not because they particularly enjoy the flavor, but because their bodies instinctively crave the nutrients it provides. Visitors often find the taste challenging initially, but gradually develop appreciation as their systems adapt to high-altitude requirements and understand the drink's functional benefits. Sampa represents minimalist nutrition taken to extremes that would challenge modern food scientists. Roasted barley flour mixed with butter tea creates a paste that provides complete nutrition in a form requiring no cooking fuel and remaining edible for extended periods without refrigeration. The taste is exactly what you'd expect from grain paste, but when you're living at altitudes where cooking fuel is precious and food preservation challenging, function trumps flavor preferences. The nutritional profile includes complex carbohydrates for sustained energy, proteins for muscle maintenance, and when mixed with butter tea, fats and minerals essential for high-altitude health. Sampa can be eaten dry, mixed with tea, or combined with other ingredients to create different textures and flavors while maintaining its basic nutritional benefits. Chang, traditional barley beer, represents thousands of years of high-altitude brewing innovation adapted to conditions where normal fermentation processes fail. This mildly alcoholic, slightly sour beverage provides calories, social lubrication, and cultural continuity while avoiding the dangerous interactions between alcohol and altitude that can occur with stronger drinks. The fermentation process works at high altitudes and cold temperatures that would prevent most brewing attempts using techniques passed down through generations and adapted to local conditions. The alcohol content remains low enough to avoid altitude-related complications while providing enough social and psychological benefits to make long winter months more bearable. Kambir bread represents engineering solutions for making bread rise at altitudes where air pressure barely supports yeast activity. These dense, round loaves are baked in traditional ovens that burn yak dung, because when you're living above the tree line, fuel sources get creative. The bread remains edible for days without preservation and provides sustained energy release perfect for extended work periods or travel situations. Preservation techniques include natural freeze-drying that happens automatically in the climate, fermentation processes adapted to extreme conditions, and smoking methods that add flavor while extending shelf life. Chirpy, dried yak cheese, becomes so hard it serves as emergency rations and teething rings, but provides concentrated protein and calcium that can be stored for years without refrigeration. Vegetable cultivation requires agricultural innovation that would impress space program nutritionists designing Mars colony food systems. Greenhouse construction, using local materials and solar heating, extends growing seasons while protecting crops from temperature extremes that can shift from hot to freezing within hours. The seasonal eating patterns follow natural cycles with precision that urban dwellers have forgotten. Summer brings fresh vegetables and dairy products that get preserved through various traditional methods for winter consumption. Winter meals focus on preserved foods and high-calorie preparations that provide energy for heating and altitude metabolism requirements. Community cooking arrangements share resources and fuel, while creating social bonds essential for psychological health during isolated winter months. Feast preparation involves entire villages working together, not just for cultural reasons, but because preparing large food quantities requires coordination and resource sharing that individual households couldn't manage independently. Women in Ladakhi society occupy positions that would have shocked traditional societies in more conventional climates, wielding economic power and social influence that developed not through progressive social movements, but through practical necessity in environments where gender restrictions represent luxury no community can afford. Property ownership, business operations, and major family decisions involve women as equal participants rather than subordinate helpers. This is not feminist ideology, but survival pragmatism. Losing half your workforce to arbitrary gender limitations would mean starvation in environments where every person's contribution becomes essential for community survival. The historical practice of polyandry, where one woman married multiple brothers simultaneously, sounds scandalous until you understand the economic mathematics involved. In regions where arable land is extremely limited, and dividing property among male heirs would create plots too small to support families. Keeping brothers united under shared property ownership with a shared wife made perfect mathematical sense for family survival. The system prevented land fragmentation while maintaining family units large enough to handle the intensive labor requirements of high-altitude agriculture. The practice has largely disappeared due to modern legal restrictions and changing economic conditions, but it demonstrates how extreme environments can produce social arrangements that prioritize survival efficiency over conventional moral expectations. Modern relationship patterns blend traditional practices with contemporary influences in ways that create fascinating cultural combinations. Young people now have more individual choice in marriage partners, but practical considerations still heavily influence decisions. Marrying within your village means understanding potential partners' family land holdings, water rights, livestock quality, and seasonal labor contributions. Romance exists within frameworks that consider economic compatibility alongside personal attraction. Educational opportunities for women have become community priorities, not just because of changing social values, but because educated women contribute more effectively to household and community survival strategies. The famous Sekmol School demonstrates how education adapted to local conditions produces young women capable of managing solar power systems, coordinating community water projects, maintaining traditional craft skills, and pursuing modern career opportunities while remaining connected to community responsibilities. Women's festivals and social gatherings serve functions extending far beyond entertainment or cultural preservation. These events coordinate seasonal activities, share essential information about weather patterns and health remedies, maintain social networks that become crucial during emergencies, and provide psychological support systems essential for mental health during long isolation periods. Religious roles for women reflect Buddhism's relatively egalitarian approach, combined with local adaptations that recognize women's spiritual capabilities. Female monastics maintain independent institutions and participate actively in community religious life. Many women serve as traditional healers, ritual specialists, and keepers of cultural knowledge that combines Buddhist philosophy with practical medicine, adapted to high-altitude health requirements. Economic responsibilities extend across all aspects of Ladakhi community life. Women manage livestock operations, run small businesses, control family financial decisions, and coordinate seasonal agricultural activities that require detailed planning and resource management. In many households, women make final decisions about resource allocation and seasonal planning, because these responsibilities require skills that combine traditional ecological knowledge with practical flexibility. The integration of traditional roles with modern opportunities creates career patterns that challenge simple categories of traditional versus contemporary women's roles. Young women now pursue higher education and professional careers while maintaining connections to agricultural responsibilities, cultural practices, and community obligations that provide security and meaning beyond individual achievement. Marriage ceremonies represent community celebrations that serve multiple social functions beyond personal relationships. These events reinforce social bonds, demonstrate successful family alliances, celebrate community prosperity, and provide opportunities for negotiating future cooperation agreements between families. The complexity and expense reflect their importance as social institutions rather than individual romantic choices. Seasonal work patterns require flexibility that adapts to environmental demands and resource availability throughout the year. Summer months involve intensive agricultural labor, winter focuses on indoor craft production and household maintenance, and year-round responsibilities include livestock care and community coordination that requires constant adaptation to weather conditions and resource availability. Tourism development creates both opportunities and challenges for women's roles. Language skills and cultural knowledge make women valuable as guides and business operators, but tourism also introduces outside cultural influences that can conflict with traditional practices. Balancing economic opportunities with cultural preservation requires ongoing negotiation and community decision-making. The influence of modern technology and communication creates new possibilities while preserving essential cultural connections. Cell phones and internet access provide educational and economic opportunities while maintaining family and community relationships that remain essential for both practical survival and cultural continuity. Perhaps most significantly, women in Ladakh demonstrate how gender equality can develop within traditional cultural frameworks rather than requiring complete abandonment of cultural practices. The result combines individual opportunities with community responsibilities in ways that provide both personal fulfillment and collective security while maintaining cultural identity and environmental adaptation. Festival celebrations in Ladakh represent community survival strategies disguised as religious and cultural events, combining ancient Buddhist traditions with practical psychological techniques for maintaining mental health and social cohesion during conditions that would challenge the strongest communities. The Hemis festival transforms the normally quiet monastery into spectacles that would make professional event planners weep with envy and logistical confusion. Held annually during summer months to celebrate Guru Padmasambhava's birthday, this festival attracts thousands of visitors to witness masked cham dances that require years of training to perform and tell complex stories through movements so intricate they function as physical meditation and religious theater simultaneously. The logistics of hosting major festivals at 11,000 feet create challenges that would defeat most professional event management companies. Food preparation begins weeks in advance, with communities coordinating massive cooking operations that feed thousands using traditional methods and limited fuel resources. Water supplies require careful management. Waste disposal needs advanced planning, and medical support becomes crucial when dealing with crowds at altitudes where simply breathing presents challenges. Cham dances represent theatrical art taken to extremes that combine religious devotion with physical endurance that would challenge professional athletes. Performers wear elaborate masks and costumes weighing over 30 pounds, while executing intricate choreography at altitudes where walking upstairs leaves most people breathless. The dances tell stories from Buddhist teachings through specific movements representing spiritual development, demon conquest, and cosmic harmony maintenance. The religious significance operates on levels that combine individual spiritual practice with community ritual and cultural preservation. Participating in dance performances provides personal meditation practice while contributing to community religious observance and maintaining cultural traditions essential for social identity. The masks and costumes represent different aspects of Buddhist philosophy while creating theatrical experiences that educate and inspire community members. Ladakhi New Year celebrations, or Losar, extend across multiple days and represent community celebration on scales that would exhaust professional party planners. Preparation begins months in advance, with families cleaning houses, preparing traditional foods, creating decorations using local materials, and coordinating social activities that strengthen relationships essential for survival during harsh winter months. The celebration includes ritual purification ceremonies that combine spiritual practice with practical community health measures, community feasts that demonstrate prosperity while ensuring everyone receives adequate nutrition, and social activities that reinforce cooperation agreements essential for community survival during isolated winter periods. Music and dance traditions reflect the region's cultural position between Tibetan Buddhism and local Himalayan influences. Traditional instruments include longhorns audible across valleys, drums made from yak hide, and bells creating soundscapes specifically designed for high-altitude acoustics. The music serves entertainment and religious functions with specific songs for different seasons, activities, and spiritual purposes. Village festivals operate on smaller scales, but with intensity reflecting their importance for community psychological health. Harvest celebrations mark successful growing seasons with rituals combining gratitude, practical planning for winter storage, and social activities that strengthen relationships essential for survival cooperation. These events include traditional sports, competitive activities, and shared meals demonstrating community prosperity and mutual support. Festival timing reflects careful coordination with agricultural cycles, weather patterns, and religious calendars that maximize participation while considering practical limitations. Summer festivals coincide with periods when travel between villages becomes relatively safe and food supplies reach peak abundance. Winter celebrations provide crucial psychological relief during months when communities face complete isolation from outside contact. Traditional sports and competitions during festivals include activities specifically adapted to local conditions and essential skills. Yak racing celebrates livestock that provide transportation and survival resources. Archery competitions using traditional bows maintain hunting and defense capabilities, and polo matches played at altitudes that would challenge professional athletes create entertainment while celebrating practical skills. Food preparation for festivals represents community cooking on scales that would challenge commercial kitchens. Traditional ovens work continuously. Community cooking areas coordinate multiple meal preparations, and food distribution ensures everyone participates regardless of individual economic circumstances. The communal nature reflects both practical necessity and cultural values that prioritize community welfare over individual resources. Religious observances extend beyond formal festivals to include daily and weekly practices that maintain spiritual rhythm throughout the year. Morning prayers, evening ceremonies, and regular monastery visits create patterns providing structure and meaning to daily life, while offering community connection and emotional support essential for mental health in isolated environments. Festival hospitality extends beyond local communities to include visitors and travelers, reflecting Buddhist values combined with practical recognition that community prosperity depends on maintaining positive relationships with outside contacts. Visitors participate as guests in community celebrations that strengthen social networks extending beyond local boundaries while contributing to local economic development. The preservation of authentic cultural content while adapting to modern influences and tourist interest represents ongoing community negotiation. Local people have learned to welcome visitors while maintaining genuine religious and cultural meaning that makes celebrations significant for community members. creating experiences that benefit both residents and outsiders without compromising cultural integrity. Perhaps most remarkably, these festivals maintain their essential function as community survival strategies while providing cultural experiences that attract international attention and economic benefits that support local development, demonstrating how traditional practices can adapt to contemporary conditions while preserving their essential cultural and psychological functions. Managing monthly expenses of $500 in Ladakh requires understanding that the local economy operates on principles combining resource scarcity with community cooperation, creating living costs that seem impossible until you adapt to lifestyle patterns that maximize survival while minimizing cash expenditure. Housing represents the most significant cost advantage, assuming you can accept accommodations that prioritize thermal efficiency over aesthetic appeal. Traditional family compounds include guest quarters available for $30–50 monthly, providing access to community kitchens, shared heating systems, and water resources that distribute utility costs among multiple users. These accommodations feature thick walls for insulation, small windows for heat retention, and shared facilities that require adjustment from Western privacy expectations. The community integration aspects of budget housing provide benefits beyond simple cost savings. Living within traditional family compounds creates access to local knowledge, cultural education, and social networks that enhance both survival capabilities and cultural understanding, while reducing dependency on expensive tourist services and imported goods. Food expenses become manageable through community participation and seasonal eating patterns that require significant lifestyle adaptation. Local family restaurants serve traditional meals for $24 per serving, providing dishes specifically designed for high-altitude nutritional requirements while supporting local economic networks. Self-cooking reduces costs further but requires learning traditional preparation methods, seasonal ingredient availability, and fuel conservation techniques adapted to local conditions. Seasonal food procurement involves participating in community activities like harvest work, food preservation projects, and bulk purchasing cooperatives that provide access to traditional foods at local prices while contributing to community economic activities. Understanding seasonal availability and storage techniques allows budget residents to maintain adequate nutrition throughout the year while supporting local agricultural systems. Transportation costs vary dramatically based on travel patterns and seasonal timing that require flexibility and advanced planning. Shared local transport options cost $515 per journey within the region, while longer distances require budgeting for weather-dependent schedules and limited route availability. Many budget travelers reduce transport expenses through hitchhiking, walking, or coordinating group travel that shares vehicle rental costs among multiple passengers. Basic supplies and daily necessities cost more than similar items in lower altitude regions due to transportation expenses and limited supply chains, but local alternatives often provide better value adapted to environmental conditions. Traditional clothing, locally produced tools, and community-made goods offer functionality specifically designed for high-altitude living while supporting local craftspeople and reducing dependency on expensive imported items. Income opportunities for budget residents include teaching services, tourism assistance, agricultural labor, and skill sharing that utilizes outside experience and education. The informal economy provides opportunities for photography services, writing projects, craft assistance, and cultural exchange activities that generate income while contributing to community development and cultural preservation efforts. Healthcare costs remain reasonable through community health systems and traditional medicine practices, but emergency situations can create major expenses due to evacuation requirements and limited local facilities. Budget planning should include health insurance covering high-altitude medical evacuation and emergency reserves for situations requiring expensive transportation to lower-altitude medical facilities. Seasonal expense variations require budgeting that considers summer opportunities versus winter limitations, with higher accommodation demand during tourist season balanced against increased income possibilities, while winter months reduce expenses but limit earning opportunities and increase heating costs that require community resource sharing. Community integration reduces living costs while providing social support essential for adapting to extreme environmental conditions. Participating in community work projects, contributing to shared responsibilities, and developing local relationships creates access to resource sharing, mutual assistance, and cultural knowledge that improves survival while reducing individual expenses. Educational opportunities include traditional craft learning, monastery participation, language study, and practical skill development that often provide accommodation and meals in exchange for participation. These arrangements create valuable learning experiences while reducing living costs and building cultural knowledge and community connections essential for long-term residents. Budget flexibility becomes essential due to weather-dependent supply availability, seasonal price fluctuations, and occasional supply disruptions affecting everything from food costs to fuel prices. Successful budget management requires maintaining emergency reserves and adapting expenses to changing conditions rather than expecting consistent monthly costs throughout the year. Local economic participation through supporting family businesses eating at community establishments, hiring local services, and purchasing traditional goods ensures budget expenditures contribute to community prosperity, while providing authentic cultural experiences and social integration that enhances both survival and enjoyment of Ladakhi life. Long-term budget residents often achieve dramatic cost reductions through seasonal work arrangements, community integration, and lifestyle adaptations that embrace local practices rather than attempting to maintain outside cultural expectations. Success requires genuine commitment to community participation and cultural adaptation rather than simply seeking inexpensive accommodation in exotic locations. Perhaps most importantly, maintaining a $500 monthly budget in Ladakh requires accepting lifestyle changes that prioritize community participation, environmental adaptation, and cultural integration over individual comfort and convenience, creating living experiences that provide genuine cultural immersion while demonstrating financial sustainability for extended residence in extreme environments. Transportation systems in Ladakh combine extreme engineering with acceptance of calculated risks, creating travel experiences that provide spectacular scenery alongside genuine dangers, requiring careful preparation and realistic assessment of personal risk tolerance and mechanical reliability expectations. The Lemanali Highway represents one of humanity's most optimistic exercises in road construction, connecting Ladakh to mainland India through 297 miles of mountain passes that regularly exceed 15,000 feet, while crossing terrain that would challenge military engineering units. The highway remains closed for 6 months annually due to snow accumulation that makes passage literally impossible, creating seasonal isolation that affects everything from supply deliveries to emergency medical access. The route crosses multiple high-altitude passes including Rotang Pass at 13,050 feet, Barilacha Pass at 16,040 feet, and several others that test both vehicle performance and driver capabilities under conditions where mechanical failure can become life-threatening situations. Road conditions vary from newly paved sections to barely maintained tracks where vehicles navigate around landslides, washouts, and construction projects that may or may not be completed before winter weather returns. Khardung Pass deserves recognition as one of the world's most spectacular exercises in automotive adventure, reaching 18,280 feet and formerly claiming the title of highest motorable road, before other regions developed competing claims. The approach involves switchbacks so steep that vehicles regularly experience overheating from combination of thin air and mechanical strain, while drivers navigate conditions where momentary attention lapses can result in 1,000-foot falls with minimal barrier protection. Vehicle preparation for high-altitude driving requires understanding how reduced air pressure affects engine performance, tire pressure changes, and cooling system efficiency. Many vehicles experience power loss, overheating problems, and altitude-related mechanical issues that can strand travelers in remote locations where professional repair assistance may be unavailable for days or weeks. Bus transportation operates on schedules that consider weather conditions, road maintenance, and mechanical reliability as flexible suggestions rather than firm commitments. Local buses represent engineering achievements combining basic automotive technology with supernatural mechanical persistence, traveling routes that challenge military vehicles while carrying passenger loads, livestock, and cargo quantities that exceed manufacturer specifications by significant margins. The passenger experience involves accepting cramped seating arrangements, unpredictable departure times, and journey durations that depend on weather conditions, road situations, and mechanical performance rather than published schedules. Breakdown assistance consists of passenger mechanical knowledge and available spare parts in nearby villages, creating situations where passenger participation in repairs becomes expected rather than optional. Shared taxi services provide faster transportation through vehicles that maximize passenger capacity while operating on routes where professional breakdown assistance may be unavailable. Toyota Sumos and similar vehicles pack multiple passengers into spaces designed for fewer people, traveling schedules that prioritize passenger turnover over comfort, while navigating road conditions that would challenge purpose-built off-road vehicles. Motorcycle travel attracts adventure enthusiasts who combine touring desires with survival skills, creating journeys that provide unmatched scenery alongside genuine risks requiring careful preparation and mechanical knowledge. High-altitude motorcycle operation involves engine performance adjustments, tire pressure management, weather adaptation, and emergency preparedness that can challenge experienced riders while providing memories lasting lifetimes for successful participants. Walking and trekking represent traditional transportation methods that remain viable and often more reliable than vehicular alternatives during certain weather conditions. Ancient trade routes connect villages through paths that avoid dangerous road sections while providing access to scenery and cultural experiences unavailable from vehicle travel. Trekking requires physical preparation for high-altitude conditions, weather planning, and supply management for multi-day journeys. Cargo transportation combines traditional pack animals with modern trucking to create supply chains delivering everything from basic necessities to luxury goods across terrain challenging both yaks and diesel engines. Supply reliability depends on weather patterns, road maintenance schedules, and mechanical availability that can create shortages and price fluctuations affecting goods that lower-altitude residents consider routine necessities. Emergency transportation presents particular challenges in regions where medical facilities are limited and weather conditions can prevent vehicle movement for extended periods. Medical evacuation capabilities include helicopter services operating weather, permitting, ground transportation dependent on road conditions, and community resources providing first aid during emergencies when outside assistance becomes temporarily unavailable. Seasonal transportation patterns create dramatic differences between summer accessibility and winter isolation that effectively disconnects Ladakh from outside contact for several months annually. Winter survival depends on autumn preparation, including supply stockpiling, heating fuel accumulation, and community coordination for emergency assistance during periods when external help remains physically impossible to obtain. Vehicle maintenance becomes community responsibility in regions where professional repair services are limited and replacement parts may require weeks to acquire. Local mechanics possess skills combining formal training with creative improvisation, maintaining vehicles under conditions challenging factory-trained technicians while using tools and materials adapted from locally available resources. Tourist transportation includes organized tour options providing safer alternatives to independent travel while offering cultural experiences and local knowledge that enhance both safety and educational value. Professional guides understand route conditions, weather patterns, cultural protocols, and emergency procedures that help visitors safely experience transportation adventures, combining spectacular scenery with authentic cultural interaction. Natural beauty in Ladakh operates on scales that challenge photographic equipment and human perception, creating landscape experiences that combine geological drama with environmental extremes in ways that redefine concepts of scenic beauty and natural wonder. Pangong Lake demonstrates nature's commitment to impossible color combinations, stretching across the India-China border while changing hues throughout daily cycles from deep blue to turquoise to green in patterns that challenge photographers and inspire visitors who manage the altitude and permit requirements necessary to witness this high-altitude phenomenon. The lake sits at 14,270 feet, requiring acclimatization, permits, and acceptance that breathing while admiring beauty becomes a legitimate physical challenge. The surrounding mountain amphitheater creates scenery combining barren majesty with geological violence preserved in stone formations, telling stories of tectonic collision spanning millions of years. These massive Earth uplifts demonstrate continental plate disagreements over territorial boundaries, while creating dramatic backdrops that emphasize scale relationships between human visitors and geological time periods. Nubra Valley provides geographical contrast through green agriculture and sand dunes, creating landscape combinations found nowhere else on Earth. The valley includes the world's highest cold desert, complete with Bactrian camels descended from ancient Silk Road caravans that now provide tourist transportation across sand dunes surrounded by snow-capped peaks, creating surreal geography requiring constant mental adjustment to accept as reality. Monastery locations demonstrate architectural placement prioritizing spiritual atmosphere over practical accessibility, creating religious buildings appearing to grow directly from cliff faces and mountain ridges. Hemis, Thixi, Diskit, and other gompas occupy positions providing spectacular views while creating environments supporting meditation and spiritual practice through integration with natural landscape rather than domination of natural features. Night sky viewing in Ladakh provides astronomical experiences urban dwellers never encounter, with air clarity and minimal light pollution revealing star patterns, planetary movements, and celestial phenomena typically visible only through professional telescopes. The combination of high altitude, dry atmosphere, and artificial lighting absence creates viewing conditions making astronomy education available to anyone willing to remain awake after sunset. Glacial formations and seasonal ice structures demonstrate climate science through formations that change visibly based on temperature variations and long-term climate patterns. Traditional glaciers, artificial ice stupas, and seasonal ice formations provide spectacular scenery while offering practical education about water resources, climate adaptation, and environmental changes affecting local survival and global climate systems. Valley landscapes combine agricultural development with natural beauty, demonstrating successful human adaptation to extreme environments. Terraced farming systems, traditional irrigation networks, and vernacular architecture create cultural landscapes enhancing, rather than detracting from natural beauty, while providing examples of sustainable development, maintaining environmental harmony through traditional ecological knowledge. Wildlife viewing includes species adapted to high-altitude conditions, demonstrating evolutionary adaptation to extreme environments. Snow leopards, Tibetan wolves, blue sheep, and various bird species provide wildlife experiences while serving important ecological functions, maintaining environmental balance in fragile high-altitude ecosystems that support both natural biodiversity and human communities. Seasonal landscape transformations create completely different experiences based on visiting timing throughout the year. Summer agricultural greenery contrasts with autumn harvest colors, winter snow coverage, and spring melt patterns, creating continuously changing scenery while demonstrating adaptation cycles essential for environmental and cultural survival in extreme climate conditions. Hidden locations accessible through trekking and local guidance provide experiences beyond main tourist destinations, including remote monasteries, concealed valleys, natural hot springs, and archaeological sites offering solitude and natural beauty without tourist crowds. These locations require local knowledge, physical preparation, and cultural sensitivity, while providing authentic experiences of Ladakhi natural and cultural heritage. Environmental fragility requires visitor responsibility to preserve natural beauty for future generations while experiencing current spectacular scenery. Climate change effects, tourist impact, and development pressure threaten environmental quality, creating Ladakh's distinctive natural beauty, requiring conservation efforts, balancing accessibility with preservation needs through community-based management and visitor education. Photography opportunities flourish under conditions providing spectacular subject matter while challenging technical skills and creative vision. Extreme lighting conditions, dramatic landscape contrasts, and unique cultural elements create artistic possibilities, attracting professional photographers while providing inspiration for amateur artists and creative visitors seeking unique visual experiences. Conservation efforts combine traditional environmental knowledge with modern scientific understanding to preserve natural beauty while supporting local communities dependent on environmental resources. Community-based conservation programs, traditional ecological management practices, and scientific research collaborate to maintain environmental quality essential for both natural beauty and cultural survival. Mountain formation geology creates educational opportunities for understanding Earth science through visible rock layers, mineral deposits, and erosion patterns that tell stories of environmental change spanning geological time periods. The landscape serves as outdoor classroom for geology, climate science, and environmental studies, while providing spectacular scenery that makes scientific education memorable and engaging. Perhaps most significantly, Ladakh's natural beauty provides spiritual and emotional experiences transcending typical tourist attractions, creating connections with natural environments that inspire personal transformation and environmental awareness, while demonstrating possibilities for human adaptation and environmental harmony under extreme conditions that challenge conventional assumptions about livable environments. Healthcare and education systems in Ladakh represent innovative adaptations to extreme conditions, combining traditional knowledge with modern necessity under circumstances that challenge conventional approaches to medical care and learning, while creating unique solutions that work effectively in isolated, high-altitude environments. Altitude sickness affects virtually every visitor, providing harsh introduction to high-altitude physiology that can range from mild discomfort to potentially fatal complications developing rapidly in people who ignore warning symptoms or attempt too rapid altitude gain. Local healthcare providers have developed treatment protocols specifically adapted to high-altitude medical emergencies, but prevention through proper acclimatization remains the primary strategy for avoiding serious complications that can overwhelm limited medical facilities. Symptoms progress from headaches and nausea to potentially fatal cerebral and pulmonary edema that can develop within hours in susceptible individuals. Treatment options include descent to lower altitudes, oxygen therapy when available, and medications that may provide temporary relief while arranging evacuation to appropriate medical facilities potentially located days away from emergency sites. Healthcare infrastructure combines traditional Tibetan medicine with modern medical facilities, reflecting both resource limitations and cultural preferences for integrated treatment approaches. The main hospital in Leh provides emergency care and basic surgical capabilities, but serious medical conditions often require evacuation to lower altitude facilities that may become unreachable during winter months or severe weather conditions affecting transportation availability. Traditional medicine practices include herbal treatments, meditation-based therapies, and healing techniques evolved over centuries to address health conditions specific to high-altitude living environments. Local healers understand altitude-related health issues, seasonal health patterns, and traditional remedies that complement modern medical treatment while providing healthcare options adapted to local conditions and cultural preferences unavailable through conventional medical approaches. Emergency medical services operate under constraints requiring community cooperation and resource sharing to provide effective response to medical emergencies when professional assistance may be unavailable for extended periods. Helicopter evacuation depends on weather conditions and may become impossible during winter months, while ground transportation to medical facilities can require hours or days depending on road conditions and seasonal accessibility limitations. Isekmol, Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, represents educational innovation, combining traditional knowledge with modern technology in ways specifically adapted to local conditions and cultural values, while preparing students for both local survival requirements and modern opportunities. Founded by Sonam Wangchuk, the institution operates entirely on solar power while providing education preparing students for environmental and economic challenges specific to Ladakh. The solar-powered campus demonstrates sustainable technology adapted to high-altitude conditions while providing practical education in renewable energy systems, ecological building techniques, and sustainable living practices that prepare students for environmental challenges while developing technical skills applicable to modern careers. Students learn to maintain and operate technology systems while developing traditional skills essential for local survival and cultural continuity. Educational philosophy emphasizes practical skills, cultural preservation, and environmental awareness alongside academic subjects, creating learning experiences that prepare students for life in Ladakh while providing opportunities for higher education and career development outside the region. The curriculum includes traditional crafts, agricultural techniques, and cultural knowledge alongside modern subjects, creating well-rounded education adapted to local needs. Community education extends beyond formal schools to include monastery education, traditional apprenticeships, and community knowledge sharing that preserves cultural traditions while adapting to changing conditions. Monks provide religious education and traditional knowledge about subjects ranging from astronomy to herbal medicine, while community elders share practical skills essential for survival in extreme environments. Safety considerations for visitors include preparation for altitude conditions, weather extremes, and limited emergency response capabilities requiring self-reliance and careful planning for potential emergency situations. Proper equipment, physical preparation, and understanding of local conditions become essential for safe travel and positive cultural interaction while minimizing risks to both visitors and local communities. Women's health programs combine modern healthcare with cultural sensitivity, addressing reproductive health, maternal care, and family planning needs while respecting cultural traditions and religious beliefs. Healthcare providers work within cultural frameworks while providing medical care adapted to local conditions and community needs that balance modern medical knowledge with cultural acceptability. Mental health support addresses challenges specific to isolated communities, seasonal depression, and cultural transition pressures affecting both local residents and long-term visitors. Community support systems, religious practices, and traditional healing approaches complement modern mental health services while providing culturally appropriate support for psychological well-being adapted to extreme environmental conditions. Preventive healthcare emphasizes nutrition, fitness, and lifestyle practices adapted to high-altitude conditions, seasonal health challenges, and environmental stress factors affecting health and well-being. Community health programs focus on preventing common health problems through education, lifestyle modification, and community cooperation rather than relying solely on treatment of established conditions. Educational opportunities for visitors include cultural learning experiences, traditional skill development, and volunteer opportunities providing education while contributing to community development and cultural preservation. These programs offer authentic learning experiences while supporting local educational and cultural institutions through meaningful exchange that benefits both visitors and local communities. Perhaps most remarkably, healthcare and education in Ladakh demonstrate how traditional knowledge and modern innovation can combine effectively under extreme conditions, creating systems that provide essential services while preserving cultural identity and environmental sustainability, essential for long-term survival and community well-being in challenging environments. Visa and permit requirements for Ladakh create bureaucratic adventures that test patience while serving legitimate purposes that become understandable once you grasp the region's unique security, environmental, and cultural challenges, requiring careful management of visitor access to sensitive areas. Indian visa requirements form the foundation of legal travel to Ladakh, with standard tourist visas providing access to most areas, while certain restricted zones require additional permits reflecting both security concerns in border regions and environmental protection needs for fragile ecosystems. The visa system simplifies basic entry procedures, but planning travel to restricted areas requires additional applications and processing time affecting travel schedules and itinerary flexibility. Inner line permits ILP become mandatory for Indian citizens visiting specific areas including Nubra Valley, Pangong Lake, and Tso-Moriri, reflecting security considerations in disputed border regions and environmental protection efforts limiting tourist impact on fragile high-altitude ecosystems. The permit process includes registration requirements and may involve group travel restrictions requiring coordination with authorized local tour operators. Protected Area Permits, PAP, apply to foreign nationals visiting restricted areas, with application processes requiring advanced planning, documentation, sponsor information, and approval times that can affect travel scheduling and require flexibility in itinerary planning. The permits reflect legitimate security concerns in sensitive border regions while serving environmental protection purposes that limit tourist numbers in areas where excessive visitation could damage fragile ecosystems. Application procedures involve multiple offices, extensive documentation requirements, and approval processes that require patience and careful attention to administrative details that must be completed correctly to avoid delays. Understanding proper procedures and maintaining complete documentation helps ensure smooth permit processing while reducing delays that can affect travel schedules and create frustration for unprepared visitors. Restricted area regulations include specific route requirements, accommodation limitations, and mandatory guide services that must be followed strictly to maintain permit validity and ensure traveler safety in remote regions where violations can result in permit cancellation, legal penalties, and travel restrictions affecting both current and future travel opportunities to sensitive areas. Group travel requirements for certain areas mandate minimum group sizes and authorized guide services reflecting both security considerations and tourist safety concerns in remote areas where individual travel poses risks to travelers and strains emergency response capabilities. Understanding group requirements helps in planning travel that meets permit conditions while ensuring adequate safety support. Border area restrictions reflect ongoing security concerns in regions where international boundaries involve disputed territories and military considerations, requiring understanding and respect for local security conditions. Travelers must understand prohibited areas, photography restrictions, and behavior expectations that reflect legitimate security concerns while maintaining positive relationships with local authorities. Seasonal permit availability varies based on weather conditions, road accessibility, and security situations that can affect permit issuance and travel planning throughout the year. Winter closures, monsoon limitations, and security assessments can temporarily restrict permit availability and require flexible travel planning considering seasonal factors beyond tourist preferences. Cost considerations include permit fees, processing charges, and required guide services that add to travel expenses while supporting local economic development and environmental protection efforts. Budgeting for permit costs helps ensure adequate travel funds while supporting legitimate administrative needs and conservation programs that maintain the qualities that make Ladakh worth visiting. Documentation maintenance requires keeping permits, identification, and travel documents accessible during travel while protecting them from weather conditions and loss that can create serious complications in remote areas where replacement documentation may become impossible to obtain quickly. Proper document storage and backup copies become essential for trouble-free travel. Cultural sensitivity requirements associated with permits include understanding local customs, religious practices, and community expectations affecting behavior in sacred areas, cultural sites, and traditional communities. Respecting cultural protocols supports positive community relationships, while fulfilling permit obligations that protect cultural heritage and maintain community support for tourism development. Local registration requirements include reporting to authorities upon arrival in certain areas, maintaining proper documentation during travel, and complying with local regulations supporting both security monitoring and tourist safety. Understanding registration procedures helps ensure compliance with local requirements while facilitating positive interactions with authorities and community members. Travel insurance considerations should include coverage for high-altitude medical emergencies, evacuation services, and travel disruptions that can occur due to weather conditions, political situations, or health emergencies affecting travel in remote border regions. Adequate insurance provides security while meeting permit requirements and personal safety needs in extreme environments. Perhaps most importantly, understanding permit requirements provides insight into legitimate concerns shaping travel regulations in Ladakh, including security needs, environmental protection, cultural preservation, and tourist safety considerations that balance access with responsibility for preserving unique qualities that make Ladakh worth visiting while protecting communities and environments that make such visits possible and meaningful. Life at the edge of the world teaches lessons extending far beyond survival techniques, providing insights into human adaptation, community cooperation, and environmental harmony that challenge fundamental assumptions about modern living while demonstrating possibilities for sustainable, fulfilling existence under extreme conditions. The relationship between humans and environment in Ladakh demonstrates sustainable living possibilities that maintain harmony with natural systems supporting long-term survival without requiring abandonment of comfort or modern benefits. Traditional practices combined with appropriate technology create lifestyles providing security and satisfaction while maintaining environmental balance essential for community survival and cultural continuity. Community cooperation reaches levels challenging individualistic societies, demonstrating how mutual dependence creates social systems, providing security, meaning, and individual fulfillment while maintaining collective survival under challenging conditions. The balance between personal autonomy and community responsibility offers models for social organization combining individual freedom with collective security that work effectively under both extreme and normal conditions. Adaptation to extreme conditions reveals human capabilities for flexibility, innovation, and resilience that often remain dormant in comfortable environments but emerge when survival requires creative problem-solving and community cooperation. Skills developed in Ladakh include both practical techniques and mental attitudes providing value regardless of environmental conditions while demonstrating human potential for successful adaptation to changing circumstances. Simplicity as lifestyle choice demonstrates how reducing material complexity can increase life satisfaction, community connection, and environmental harmony while providing security and meaning that consumer culture promises but rarely delivers. Ladakhi approaches to simple living offer practical models for reducing environmental impact while maintaining quality of life that enhances rather than diminishes human potential and community relationships. Cultural preservation combined with selective modernization shows how communities can maintain essential cultural identity while adopting beneficial changes, improving survival and life quality without sacrificing cultural meaning or community cohesion. The balance between tradition and change provides models for cultural adaptation that preserve essential values while embracing helpful innovations. Spiritual practice integrated with daily life demonstrates how religious and philosophical traditions provide practical guidance for community living, environmental adaptation, and personal development that enhances both individual well-being and collective survival. Buddhist approaches to mindfulness, acceptance, and compassion provide tools improving life quality under any conditions while creating social harmony essential for community success. Economic systems, based on cooperation rather than pure competition, create prosperity models prioritizing community welfare and environmental sustainability while providing individual security and opportunity. Ladakhi economic practices demonstrate alternatives to purely market-based systems that may provide greater long-term stability and life satisfaction while maintaining innovation and individual achievement within community frameworks. Environmental wisdom, developed through generations of living in fragile ecosystems, provides insights into sustainable resource management, climate adaptation, and ecological balance becoming increasingly relevant as global environmental challenges require local solutions and community-based conservation efforts that combine traditional knowledge with modern scientific understanding. Personal resilience developed through facing extreme conditions includes both physical capabilities and mental attitudes, enhancing life satisfaction, reducing anxiety about uncertainty, and providing confidence for handling challenges arising in any environment. Skills learned in Ladakh transfer to other life situations while providing perspective on what constitutes genuine problems versus temporary inconveniences. The integration of work and life in ways providing meaning, community connection, and personal satisfaction demonstrates alternatives to industrial approaches separating work from life while providing economic security and personal fulfillment through activities contributing to community welfare and individual development within sustainable frameworks. Perhaps most significantly, Ladakh demonstrates that human happiness and community prosperity don't require material abundance and technological complexity that modern societies consider essential, while showing that simple living doesn't require sacrificing comfort, security, or opportunities for personal growth and community contribution that enhance rather than diminish human potential. Standing at 18,000 feet above sea level, watching prayer flags flutter against impossibly blue skies, you realize Ladakh isn't just another travel destination but a masterclass in human possibility. It's proof that people can create meaningful, sustainable communities under conditions that would defeat most civilizations, maintaining remarkable happiness, social harmony, and environmental balance while demonstrating that the problems facing modern societies aren't inevitable consequences of human nature, but results of specific choices about social organization and environmental relationships. The extreme conditions that make Ladakh challenging also make it clarifying, revealing the difference between what matters and what doesn't in ways comfortable environments obscure. The skills developed for surviving here: adaptability, community cooperation, environmental consciousness, spiritual practice, simple living, turn out to be exactly the skills needed for creating more satisfying and sustainable approaches to modern life anywhere, providing practical models for human community that challenge assumptions about necessity for happiness, security, and prosperity, while demonstrating possibilities for human societies that balance individual opportunity with collective welfare and environmental harmony.